A millionaire paid a house cleaner a fortune to pretend to be his wife for 7 days. When his grandmother arrived from Europe, the truth began to blur between lies and real feelings. Secrets came to light, and their lives changed forever in ways no one could predict. A story of truth, redemption, and unexpected love. Get ready, because this story will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your like on this video and comment where you're watching from. Sometimes the moments that change our lives forever don't arrive with fanfare or warning. They arrive while we're on our knees, scrubbing someone else's floor, believing we're invisible. The Italian marble gleamed beneath Maya Torres's knees like a cruel mirror reflecting everything she wasn't. 32 years of life summarized in a bucket of soapy water, a worn bristle brush, and the persistent scent of bleach that had become her involuntary perfume. The January sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of this penthouse on the 42nd floor, the highest in the most exclusive building in downtown Los Angeles, painting golden rectangles of light across the surfaces she had just polished. Maya paused for a moment to stretch her back. The dull ache in her lower spine had become a permanent companion, a consequence of years bent over other people's floors, bathtubs she would never use, kitchens where she would never cook for her own family. She wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and surveyed the result of 3 hours of intensive work. The apartment looked like something from an architecture magazine, minimalist, cold, impeccable. Every object occupied its place with millimetric precision, as if someone had measured with a ruler the distance between the crystal vase and the empty picture frame on the fireplace mantel. Empty. That was the word that defined this place. 2,000 square feet of soulless luxury, without crumbs on the floor, without forgotten mugs on the table, without that vital disorder that betrays the presence of someone who actually lives there. The owner of the apartment was merely a name on the cleaning agency's contract, Daniel Ashford. Maya had seen him only once, from a distance, when he stepped out of the private elevator while she entered through the service door. Tall, with broad shoulders beneath a suit that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent, with that angular jawline that appears on the covers of business magazines. Their eyes hadn't met. To him, she was part of the furniture, as visible as the ventilation system or the pipes behind the walls. Maya picked up the bucket and headed toward the master bathroom to empty the dirty water. Her sneakers, once white, now an indefinite gray, made no sound on the floor she had just cleaned. She had learned to move like a ghost through rich people's homes, to touch nothing she shouldn't touch, to not look too long at family photographs, to not wonder what it would be like to sleep in 1,000 thread-count sheets or shower under that cascade of hot water that fell from the ceiling like tropical rain. She was pouring the grayish water into the toilet when she heard the sound of the elevator. Her body tensed automatically. She hadn't expected anyone to arrive. According to the schedule, Mr. Ashford was in a meeting until 7 in the evening, and it was barely 3. She hurried to close the lid, gathered her cleaning supplies, and looked around for the service exit. But the voice that came from the living room stopped her cold. It wasn't the controlled, firm voice she had heard that one time in the hallway. It was something completely different. A man on the verge of collapse, speaking on the phone with a desperation that bordered on panic. No, listen to me, Ryan. This can't be happening. What do you mean she's arriving tomorrow? The trip was supposed to be in March. We're in January. Maya remained motionless in the bathroom doorway, not knowing whether to make her presence known or wait for him to finish the call so she could slip away. The second option seemed more sensible, more in line with her years of training to be invisible. What do I tell her then? That I've been lying to her for the past 2 years? That the wife I wrote about in all my letters doesn't exist? The bucket slipped from Maya's fingers and struck the marble floor with a crash that echoed throughout the apartment. The water remaining at the bottom splashed her work pants, but she barely noticed. Her entire body had turned into a pillar of salt, her eyes fixed on the figure of the man who had just appeared in the hallway. Daniel Ashford was looking at her as if she were a ghost materialized from nowhere. The phone still pressed to his ear, his eyes a brown so dark it seemed black, wide open with a mixture of surprise and something else. Something Maya couldn't identify at that moment, but which she would later recognize as the flash of a desperate idea. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone without taking his eyes off Maya. Yes, no, later. He ended the call and they stood there, face to face, separated by 15 feet of hallway and by an abyss of social class that neither of them needed to name to feel it. "I'm sorry," Maya murmured, bending down to pick up the bucket. "I didn't know you were coming. I'm almost done. I'll leave right away." But when she tried to pass by him toward the service exit, a hand gripped her arm, not with brute force, but with a firmness that made her stop. "Wait." Maya looked up. Up close, Daniel Ashford wasn't the monolith of perfection he had seemed from afar. He had deep circles under his eyes, a shadow of stubble from someone who hadn't slept well, and something in the tension of his jaw that spoke of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. "What's your name, Finus?" he asked. Maya Torres. I'm from the cleaning agency. I come on Tuesdays and Fridays, as agreed. If there's any problem with the service, you can call the office and—" "How much do you make a month?" The question hit her like a punch. Maya felt heat rising to her cheeks, a mixture of shame and anger she knew all too well. "That's none of your business. I need to know. Why? Are you going to complain that you're being charged too much for the service? Because I assure you that of what you pay, I only get a fraction. So if you have a problem, I'll pay you 5 years of your salary." Maya blinked, then blinked again. She must have misheard. The bleach sometimes affected her ears, or maybe the January heat was finally frying her brain. "Excuse me, 5 years of your current salary all at once, in cash if you prefer. Sir, I don't know what kind of proposal you think you're making, but I'm not—" "It's not what you think," he interrupted. And for the first time, Maya detected something like embarrassment in his voice. "I need you to pretend to be my wife, just 7 days. The silence that followed was so dense that Maya could have cut it with her scrub brush. She looked at the man before her, searching for signs of madness, of a joke, of anything that would explain such absurdity. But Daniel Ashford's dark eyes showed only pure desperation. "Your wife?" "My grandmother arrives tomorrow from Europe. She's 83 years old and has a heart condition. For the past 2 years, every time she wrote asking about my personal life, I invented a wife, a woman who doesn't exist. I sent her photos from the internet, told her invented stories, made her believe I had finally found someone." "Why would you do something like that?" "Because she was sick, because the doctors didn't know if she would survive the surgery, because all she wanted was to see me happy before she died, and I couldn't disappoint her, not her." Maya let out a dry, humorless laugh. "So you lied to her?" "So I protected her." "It's the same thing." "No, it's not." They looked at each other for a long moment. Maya noticed that he still hadn't let go of her arm, but his grip had softened, turned into something more like a silent plea. "Mr. Ashford, Daniel." "Mr. Ashford," she repeated firmly. "What you're asking is insane. You don't know me. You know nothing about me. How do you expect me to pretend to be your wife in front of your grandmother? We can prepare everything. We have until tomorrow night. I'll give you information, photos, everything you need to know about my life, about our supposed life together. And what happens if she figures it out, if she asks questions I can't answer? We improvise. We improvise." Maya finally pulled free of his grip and took a step back. "This isn't a game, sir. It's lying to a sick elderly woman. It's making her believe her grandson is happy when he clearly isn't. It's giving her 7 days of peace." The phrase hung in the air between them. Maya thought of her own grandmother, dead 10 years ago, and of all the small, merciful lies she had told her in her final months. "Yes, Grandma, I'm eating well. No, Grandma, I'm not working too hard. Yes, Grandma, I'm happy." "Even if I wanted to help you," she said finally, "this would never work. Look at me." She gestured at herself, the cleaning uniform stained with chemicals, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her nails short and unpainted. "Do you really think anyone would believe a woman like me is married to someone like you?" "A woman like you?" "A woman who cleans floors for a living. A woman who takes the 5 a.m. bus because she can't afford a car. A woman who has no idea what the difference is between a glass of red wine and one of white, or how to use half the silverware in your kitchen." Daniel looked at her for a long moment, and something changed in his expression. Something Maya hadn't expected. Respect. My grandmother was a housekeeper until she was 25, he said quietly. She scrubbed floors in rich people's homes before she met my grandfather. She built everything my family has now with her own hands. If there's anyone in the world capable of recognizing a hard-working, dignified woman, it's her. Maya felt something loosen in her chest, a small crack in the armor she had built over years of being looked down upon. Even so, she said, regaining her composure, the answer is no. I'm sorry about your situation, but I can't do this. It's not right. She picked up the bucket, the brush, the rags, and walked toward the service door with all the dignity she could muster. She was about to turn the handle when his voice reached her one last time. The money will be available when you change your mind. Maya didn't turn around. I'm not going to change my mind. But as she waited for the service elevator, with the scent of bleach embedded in her skin and the weight of the bucket pulling at her arm, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered something she tried to ignore. 5 years of salary. 5 years. No. She wasn't for sale. She never had been and never would be. At least, that's what she believed when she left the building that afternoon, not knowing that fate had other plans. The 6 o'clock bus was more crowded than usual. Maya pushed her way through sweaty bodies and shopping bags until she found a space where she could hold onto the handrail. The January heat was relentless, a humid monster that clung to the skin and turned every commute into a small torture. As the vehicle lurched through the city streets, Maya couldn't stop thinking about what had happened in the penthouse on the 42nd floor. The absurd proposal, the desperate eyes of that man, the figure he had mentioned with the casualness of someone discussing the weather. 5 years of salary. She did the mental calculation for the 10th time. With that money, she could pay off the hospital debt from when her father got sick. She could buy her mother the blood pressure medication that was always too expensive. She could fix the bathroom pipe that had been dripping for months. She could perhaps take a vacation for the first time in 11 years. No. She shook her head, as if she could shoo away the thoughts like annoying flies. She wasn't that kind of person. She didn't sell her dignity for money, no matter how much she needed it. Her mother had taught her that the only thing no one could take from a poor person was their integrity. And Maya had clung to that principle like a lifeline throughout her entire life. The bus stopped at her stop and she stepped out into the suffocating afternoon heat. The neighborhood greeted her with its familiar sounds. Reggaeton playing from some window, children playing in the street, the fruit cart vendor hawking his mangoes and papayas. It was a humble but vibrant neighborhood, a place where everyone knew everyone, and doors were left open because there was nothing worth stealing. Maya walked the 3 blocks to her building, a 4-story apartment block with peeling paint and a staircase that creaked ominously every time someone climbed it. She lived on the 3rd floor, in a 2-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother since her father died 5 years ago. It was when she reached the landing of her floor that she saw it. The white paper stuck to the door of her apartment gleamed under the yellowish hallway light, like bad news waiting to be read. Maya felt her stomach contract even before she got close enough to read the words. Eviction notice. Due to non-payment of 3 months' rent, the occupants of this property are hereby notified that they have 15 days to vacate the premises or settle the outstanding debt. Failure to comply with either condition will result in forced eviction by court order. The words blurred before her eyes. 3 months. How was that possible? She had paid. She had paid. No, she hadn't paid. Last month, the money had gone to her mother's hospitalization when she had the respiratory crisis. The month before to the medical tests that insurance didn't cover, and the other. Maya couldn't even remember what the other had gone to, but somehow, between the work routine and caring for her mother, she had lost count. She tore the paper from the door and entered the apartment with trembling hands. "Mom?" The sound that answered her was a cough, deep, wet, the kind of cough that drags something up from the bottom of the lungs. Maya dropped the cleaning bucket at the entrance and ran to the living room. Rosa Torres was sitting on the couch, a piece of furniture so old it had more patches than original fabric, with a blanket over her legs despite the heat. Her 60 years looked like 80 at that moment. Greyish skin, sunken eyes, white hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. "Mum, did you take your medicine?" It ran out yesterday, Rosa replied in a raspy voice. I was going to tell you, but you looked so tired this morning. Maya closed her eyes. The blood pressure medication, the one that cost almost a full day's work, the one her mother needed every day to keep her heart from playing tricks on her. I'm going to the pharmacy, she said, automatically reaching for her purse. Do you need anything else? Maya. Her mother's voice, though weak, had that tone that brooked no argument. Maya stopped. What's that paper you had in your hand? Instinctively, Maya hid the eviction notice behind her back, but it was too late. Rosa's eyes, though tired, hadn't lost their sharpness. Nothing, Mom, advertising. Maya Maria Torres, don't lie to me. The full name, the ultimate weapon of every Latina mother. Maya sighed and handed over the paper. The silence that followed was worse than any reproach. Rosa read the notice once, then again, and when she looked up, her eyes were filled with tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. It's my fault if I hadn't gotten sick. Don't say that. Maya sat beside her and took her hands. It's no one's fault. We're going to figure this out. We always figure everything out. How? You already work at 3 different houses. You already sleep less than 5 hours. What else are you going to do? Stop eating? If necessary, yes. No. Rosa squeezed her daughter's hands with surprising strength for her condition. I won't let you destroy yourself because of me. I already watched your father work himself to death. I won't watch the same thing happen to you. Maya felt the tears threatening to fall, but she held them back. She had learned long ago that crying was a luxury she couldn't afford. Mom, listen to me. 15 days is a lot of time. I can ask for advances at work. I can look for extra shifts. Can you come up with 3 months' rent in 15 days? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. No, she couldn't. Maya knew it, and her mother knew it. 3 months' rent plus medicine plus food plus basic utilities. It was mathematically impossible, unless... Daniel Ashford's face appeared in her mind, as vivid as if he were standing right in front of her. 5 years of salary, just 7 days. Mum, I need you to lie down. I'm going to get the medicine, and when I come back, we'll have some dinner. Maya, what are you thinking? Nothing, I just need to think. She got up before her mother could keep interrogating her. She grabbed her purse, where she knew there was barely enough for the medicine, not for dinner, and left the apartment. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. I can't do this. I can't sell myself like this. But then she heard her mother's cough again through the thin door, and the image of the eviction notice superimposed itself over all her moral principles. What matters more, your pride or your mother's life? Maya took out her phone, an old model with a cracked screen, and searched through her received call history. There it was. The number the cleaning agency had given her to contact the client on the 42nd floor in case of emergency. Her fingers trembled over the screen. Just 7 days, she told herself. 7 days and everything gets solved. No one has to know. It's like any other job. But she knew it was a lie. This wasn't like cleaning floors or scrubbing bathrooms. This was lying, pretending, selling herself. But it's for Mum. She pressed the call button before she could change her mind. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. Yes? Daniel Ashford's voice sounded different on the phone, more human, more vulnerable. It's Maya, the woman who cleans your apartment. A brief silence. I knew you'd call. Don't think you're so special, she replied, with more brusqueness than she intended. I'm not doing this for you. I have my reasons. I don't care about your reasons. Do you accept? Maya looked toward her apartment door. She thought about her mother coughing on the couch, about the eviction notice, about the 15 days that wouldn't be enough for anything. I accept, but I have conditions. Whatever you want. The money up front, all of it, before I set foot in your house as your supposed wife. Done. And when the 7 days are over, you and I never see each other again, ever. It's like this never happened. Agreed. And one more thing. Maya took a deep breath. If at any point your grandmother asks me directly if we're deceiving her, I'm not going to lie to her. I can't do that to an elderly woman while looking her in the eyes. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. That's a risk. It's my condition. Take it or leave it. Another silence. Maya could almost hear the gears turning in that man's head, calculating probabilities, evaluating options. Deal, he said finally. I'll expect you tomorrow at 10 in the morning. We have a lot to prepare before my grandmother arrives. I'll be there. Maya ended the call and stood staring at her phone's cracked screen for a long moment. What did you just do? But there was no turning back now. She had crossed a line she never thought she would cross, and now all that remained was to walk forward and pray that the abyss on the other side wasn't as deep as she feared. She put away the phone, wiped the tears she didn't know had fallen down her cheeks, and went down the stairs toward the pharmacy. Her mother would have her medicine tonight, and in 15 days they would have a roof over their heads, the price she would pay later. The private elevator of the most exclusive building in the city felt different when you weren't carrying a cleaning bucket in your hand. Maya watched her reflection in the polished steel doors and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. It was still her, of course. The same angular face inherited from her father, the same dark eyes of her mother, the same black hair that refused to cooperate with any sophisticated hairstyle. But today, she wasn't wearing her cleaning uniform. She had put on her best clothes, jeans without tears, a white blouse she had ironed 3 times that morning, and the only heels she owned, bought 4 years ago for a neighbor's funeral. The elevator stopped on the 42nd floor, and the doors opened with an elegant whisper. Maya took a deep breath and stepped out into the vestibule. Daniel Ashford was waiting beside his apartment door. Dressed in dress pants and a light blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up, he looked less like the intimidating businessman from the day before and more like a normal man worried about something important. "You're punctual?" he said by way of greeting. "You said 10. It's 10. He nodded and stepped aside to let her pass. The apartment looked exactly the same as when she had cleaned it, impeccable, gleaming, empty. Only now there was a coffee table covered with folders, photographs, and papers. "Before we start," Maya said, stopping in the middle of the living room, "I need to see the money. It's in your account." "What?" Daniel took out his phone and showed her the screen. It was a screenshot of a bank transfer in the name of Maya Maria Torres. The figure had so many zeros that it took Maya several seconds to process it. "How did you get my bank details?" "The cleaning agency has them in your file, and before you say anything, yes, that was probably illegal, but I figured you'd prefer to have the money secured before we start." Maya didn't know whether to feel furious about the invasion of her privacy or relieved that the money was already safe. She opted for a mixture of both. "Next time, ask before digging through my personal information." "Next time," he repeated with a shadow of a smile. "That would imply this is going to work. That remains to be seen." They sat on the Italian leather sofas, facing each other, with the table full of documents between them. Maya had expected to feel out of place in this environment of luxury, but she discovered that anger and determination were excellent antidotes to intimidation. "All right," said Daniel, opening the first folder. "This is everything you need to know about our supposed relationship. For the next 3 hours, Maya received an intensive course on a life she had never lived. According to the story Daniel had constructed for his grandmother, they had met at a contemporary art exhibition 2 years ago. She was an interior designer. "That explains why you know about cleaning," he said, earning himself a murderous look, freelance without close family, and they had kept their relationship secret for months before getting married in an intimate ceremony abroad. "Why abroad? Because that way my grandmother can't easily verify the records." "You thought of everything." "I had 2 years to invent this lie. Believe me, there were nights I couldn't sleep thinking about all the details that could go wrong." Maya leafed through the photographs he had prepared for her, edited images where she appeared alongside Daniel in different romantic settings, beaches, restaurants, sunsets, all fake, all perfectly convincing. "Where did you get these photos of me?" "From your social media profile. Before you protest, it's public information. I stopped posting over a year ago." "I know. That's why I had to work with what was there." Maya stared at one photo in particular. It was of her at a birthday party, smiling at the camera with a cake in front of her face. It was her mother's birthday 2 years ago, in the small apartment they were now threatening to take from them. In the edited version, Daniel appeared at her side with an arm around her shoulders, as if he had always been there. "My mother is sick," she said suddenly, not knowing why she felt the need to explain herself. "The money is for her treatment." Daniel looked at her in silence for a moment. "You don't have to justify yourself." "I'm not justifying myself. I just want you to know that I'm not doing this for fun. I'm not one of those women who sell themselves to the highest bidder. I never thought you were." The comment disarmed her more than any insult could have. Maya lowered her gaze to the photographs, feeling strangely exposed. "Let's continue," she said, resuming her professional tone. "What else do I need to know?" The following hours were a marathon of information. The grandmother's full name was Eleanor Ashford, widowed for 15 years, born in a small town in the Midwest. She had worked as a domestic employee in wealthy families' homes until she met her husband, a merchant who had built a small empire of fabric stores. Over time, that business had transformed into the textile corporation that Daniel now ran. "My grandfather died when I was 20, he explained. "Since then, my grandmother dedicated herself to traveling and making sure my brother and I didn't ruin what she and Grandpa built." "Your brother?" Maya remembered seeing a second name in some company documents. "Does he also work in the family business?" Daniel's expression hardened. "Kevin, he's 3 years younger than me, and yes, he has a position in the company, though he spends more time trying to prove he should be in my place than doing anything useful." "Are you going to have problems with him during these 7 days?" "Probably. Kevin would do anything to take control of the company. If he finds out this is a charade, what would happen?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He got up from the sofa and walked to the windows, giving Maya his back. "My grandmother has a very specific will. Most of her personal fortune is destined for whoever she considers most capable of continuing her legacy. For years I assumed that would be me, but in recent letters, she started wondering if Kevin might be a better choice." "Why?" "Because Kevin is married. He has 2 kids, a normal family, and I only had excuses. Until I invented a wife." Maya was beginning to understand. This wasn't just about deceiving a sick grandmother. It was about a silent war between brothers over $1 million inheritance. So if Kevin discovers the truth, he wins, gets everything, and dismantles the company piece by piece to sell it to the highest bidder because he never cared about the business, only the money it represents. "And you do care?" Daniel turned to look at her. "That company has 3,000 employees, families that depend on a paycheck at the end of the month. If Kevin sells it, most of them will lose their jobs." He paused. "I know you don't know me and you probably think I'm just another millionaire worried about his bank account, but this isn't just about me." Maya wanted not to believe him. She wanted to think it was another manipulation, another well-constructed lie. But there was something in the way he spoke about those 3,000 employees that reminded her of her father, who had spent 30 years working in a factory until they closed it and left him on the street. "All right," she said finally. "What else do I need to know?" They continued working until the sun began to set on the horizon and shadows stretched across the marble floor. Maya's head was full of dates, names, invented anecdotes, and details about a life she had never lived but now had to defend as if it were her own. "One last thing," Daniel said when she got up to leave. "My grandmother travels with her lifelong assistant. Her name is Grace, and she's been at her side for 40 years. Is that a problem?" "She's observant, very observant. If there's anyone capable of detecting that something doesn't add up, it's her." Maya nodded, adding that piece of information to the mental list of dangers she would face. "We start tomorrow, then. Tomorrow we start. I'll send a car to pick you up at 9 in the morning. Maya was about to protest. She could take the bus like always, but she realized that was no longer an option. Starting tomorrow, she was Daniel Ashford's wife. Millionaires' wives didn't take public buses. She walked toward the elevator with the folder of information under her arm, feeling the weight of the next 7 days on her shoulders. At the door, she stopped. Daniel? He looked up, surprised perhaps by the use of his name. Why me? She asked. You could have hired a professional actress, someone who knew how to move in your world. Why the woman who cleans your floor? He seemed to consider the question for a long moment. Because when you dropped that bucket yesterday, you didn't apologize first for the noise. You apologized for being where you shouldn't be. He paused. My grandmother taught me to recognize people by the way they apologize. Those who apologize for being a bother are the ones who have the most to offer. Maya didn't know how to respond to that. She nodded once, awkwardly, and stepped into the elevator. The doors closed and she stood staring at her reflection again. What are you doing? Asked the woman in the mirror. What I have to do, she answered silently. And as the elevator descended 42 floors toward the reality of her life, Maya Torres prepared to become someone completely different, at least for 7 days. Los Angeles International Airport buzzed with the activity of an ordinary January day. Families reuniting after months of separation, executives with briefcases running to their flights, children crying from the heat and exhaustion. Maya watched everything from the window of the VIP lounge, an air-conditioned space where coffee was served in porcelain cups and nobody sweated. She felt like a fraud. No, correction, she was a fraud. A fraud dressed in clothes that weren't hers. Daniel had insisted on providing her with an appropriate wardrobe, sitting on a sofa that probably cost more than all the furniture in her apartment combined, waiting for an elderly woman she was going to lie to for a week. Breathe, Daniel murmured beside her. You look like you're about to vomit. Thanks for the observation. Very helpful. He almost smiled but held back. Her flight just landed. In 15 minutes she'll be here. 15 minutes. Maya felt her stomach contract. Over the past day and a half, she had memorized an absurd amount of information. The date of their supposed wedding anniversary, June 12th. The restaurant where Daniel had supposedly proposed, an Italian place downtown she could never afford. Her invented favorite dessert, tiramisu, because it was the only Italian dessert whose name she knew, and dozens of other details that now formed a house of cards in her mind, ready to collapse at the first gust of wind. One more thing, said Daniel, lowering his voice. My grandmother is going to hug you and she's going to kiss your cheeks and she'll probably cry. Cry. She's been waiting 2 years to meet you. To her, you're the woman who finally made her grandson happy. Maya closed her eyes for a moment. This is a terrible idea. I know. We're going to hurt an elderly woman. I know. Why am I still here then? Because you need the money and I need a wife. Daniel paused. And because, deep down, we both hope that 7 days of happiness are worth more than the truth that will come after. Before Maya could respond, a door opened at the back of the lounge and an airport employee entered, pushing a wheelchair. Time seemed to stop. Eleanor Ashford was smaller than Maya had imagined, a tiny woman no more than 5 feet tall, wrapped in a burgundy traveling suit with her white hair gathered in an elegant bun. Her face was lined with wrinkles, but her eyes, the same dark brown as her grandson's, shone with a vitality that belied her 83 years. Behind the wheelchair walked another woman, taller, more robust, with the expression of someone who has seen a lot of the world and trusts very little of it. That must be Grace, the lifelong assistant. Maya noticed how her eyes scanned her from head to toe the moment she entered the lounge. "My boy!" exclaimed Eleanor, extending her arms toward Daniel. He stepped forward and knelt beside the wheelchair to embrace his grandmother. From where she stood, Maya could see how the businessman's face transformed. The tension disappeared. The worry lines softened, and for a moment, he was simply a man embracing the woman who had raised him. "Grandma," he murmured against her hair, "I missed you so much. And I missed you, my dear. And I missed you." They separated after a moment that seemed eternal, and then Eleanor's eyes settled on Maya. "And this beauty is—" "Grandma," said Daniel, standing up and extending a hand toward Maya. "I'd like you to meet Maya, my wife." Maya advanced as if walking toward the gallows. Every step was an exercise in control. Don't tremble. Don't trip in these impossible shoes. Don't run toward the nearest exit. "Mrs. Ashford," she began, but Eleanor raised a wrinkled hand to stop her. No, 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 none of that, Mrs. Ashford. I'm your grandmother now. Her eyes filled with tears. Let me look at you, my dear. Let me see the woman who conquered my stubborn grandson's heart. Eleanor's hands took Maya's, and the contact was like receiving an electric shock of tenderness. The old woman's skin was soft, delicate as tissue paper, but her grip was firm. "You're beautiful," said Eleanor, "more beautiful than I imagined, and you have a worker's hands." She turned Maya's hands over to examine her palms. "These hands know hard work, I like that." Maya didn't know what to say. She had expected questions, interrogations, tests to overcome. Not this immediate acceptance, this warmth that enveloped her like a blanket in winter. "Thank you," she finally murmured. "It's an honor to meet you. Daniel has told me so much about you." "Oh, has he?" Eleanor looked at her grandson with an arched eyebrow. "And what has this boy who only knows how to talk about business told you?" "That you're the strongest woman he knows, and that everything he is, he owes to you." The silence that followed was different. Eleanor blinked several times, as if holding back tears, and squeezed Maya's hands harder. "I see you're smart too. You know exactly what to say to a sentimental old woman." She turned to Daniel. "I like her, my boy. I like her very much." Maya felt a lump in her throat. This was worse than she had imagined, much worse, because Eleanor wasn't the distant, cold matriarch she had expected. She was a grandmother, a real grandmother, with unconditional love shining in every wrinkle of her face. "I'm deceiving a grandmother," thought Maya. "What kind of person have I become?" The journey back to the mansion, because it turned out that Daniel didn't just have the penthouse on the 42nd floor, but also a property in the Pacific Palisades, was a blur of conversation and observation. Eleanor kept asking questions about Maya's work, about how they had met, about their plans for the future. Maya answered with the rehearsed lies, but each answer left a bitter taste in her mouth. Meanwhile, from the front passenger seat, Grace never took her eyes off her. The assistant hadn't said more than 10 words since they left the airport, but her gaze said everything. "I'm watching you. I know something's not right. And I'm going to find out." The mansion appeared at the end of a cypress-lined driveway. It was a Spanish colonial-style construction with white walls, red tiles, and a garden that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Fuchsia bougainvillea climbed the porch columns, and the scent of jasmine permeated the warm January air. "Welcome home, Grandma," said Daniel as he helped Eleanor out of the car. "My home will always be that little house where I was born," she replied with a smile. "But this place has its charms." They entered the mansion, and Maya immediately felt transported to another century. The floors were dark wood, the walls decorated with antique tapestries, and every room seemed to contain more history than she could process in a lifetime. "I've prepared the room in the East Wing for you," said Grace, speaking directly to Maya for the first time. "The one with the garden view. I hope it will be to your liking, ma'am." The way she pronounced ma'am made it clear she didn't believe for a moment that Maya deserved that title. "Thank you," Maya replied, maintaining her composure. "I'm sure it will be perfect. The luggage has already been taken up. The bathroom has hot water 24 hours, and if you need anything during the night, my room is at the end of the hall." "To watch you better," Maya completed mentally. Eleanor, apparently oblivious to the tension, clapped with enthusiasm. "Wonderful! Now, I need to rest a bit before dinner. The flight was exhausting, but tonight I want you to tell me everything about your life together. Everything." She withdrew, leaning on Grace's arm, leaving Daniel and Maya alone in the main vestibule. The silence that followed was dense. "Are you okay?" he asked. "No." "I'm sorry." "No, you're not sorry. If you were, you wouldn't have gotten me into this." Daniel seemed about to say something, but held back. "Come, I'll show you the room." They climbed a wooden staircase that creaked softly under their feet. The east wing of the mansion was more modern than the rest, with wide windows and furniture with simple lines. The room they had been assigned was enormous, a canopied double bed, a dressing room, a bathroom with a hot tub, and a balcony overlooking a garden full of rose bushes. Maya froze in the doorway. "We're going to sleep in the same room." It's what they expect from a marriage. But There's a sofa. He pointed to a divan by the window. I'll sleep there. Maya entered slowly, examining every detail as if looking for hidden traps. This isn't going to work, she said finally. Your grandmother is too good. And that Grace, she knows something's wrong. I saw it in her face. Grace suspects everyone. She spent 40 years protecting my grandmother from con artists, gold diggers, and interested relatives. It's her job to be suspicious. And what happens when she confirms her suspicions? She won't. Daniel approached her. Listen, I know this is difficult. I know I'm asking you something impossible. But I just need you to hold on for 7 days. 7 days, and all of this ends. Maya looked him in the eyes, searching for something, sincerity, guilt, anything that would help her understand this man who had turned her life into chaos. Why did you lie to her? She asked. To your grandmother, I mean. Why didn't you just tell her the truth? What truth? That I work 18 hours a day and don't have time for anything else? That the last woman I dated left me because I said I preferred going to a shareholders meeting over her birthday? That I'm so broken I don't even know what having a normal relationship would be like? The words poured out of him like water from a broken dam. Maya watched as the self-assured man crumbled for a moment, revealing something more fragile beneath. My grandmother almost died 2 years ago, he continued in a lower voice. An infection that got complicated. I spent 3 weeks by her bedside, not knowing if she would wake up. And when she did wake up, the first thing she asked was if I was happy, if I had someone to take care of me. And you lied to her. I gave her hope. Daniel let himself fall onto the edge of the bed. Maybe it's the same thing, maybe it's worse, but in that moment I couldn't look at her face and tell her I was alone. I couldn't. Maya stood by the door, torn between empathy and anger. And now here we are, she said finally. 2 strangers pretending to be married to keep a lie alive. Yes. This is insane. Yes. We're going to hurt innocent people. Probably. Maya let out a long sigh as if expelling all the air from her lungs. I'm going to need a glass of wine, or 5. For the first time since they met, Daniel smiled for real. The bar is downstairs, I'll show you where. And so, with the strange camaraderie of 2 people trapped in the same disaster, they went down together to face the first night of the 7 days that would change their lives forever. The 3rd day of the charade dawned with a sky covered in grey clouds and a humid wind that announced a storm. Maya woke up in the double bed. Daniel had kept his word about sleeping on the divan, with the feeling of having run a marathon in her sleep. The first 2 days had been a constant exercise in survival. Every meal, every conversation, every moment shared with Eleanor was a minefield of potentially dangerous questions. How did you celebrate your first anniversary? What did you give my grandson for his birthday? Do you have plans to have children? Maya had answered all of them with the rehearsed lies, but each time she felt dirtier. Eleanor treated her like a daughter, sharing recipes, anecdotes from her youth, advice on how to handle her grandson's difficult personality. And Maya received all of it, knowing she didn't deserve a single ounce of that affection. That morning, as she came down to breakfast, she found Eleanor alone in the garden. The old woman was sitting on a stone bench beside the fountain, with a cup of tea in her hands and her gaze lost in the roses. "Good morning, Grandma," said Maya, using the title that still cost her to pronounce. Eleanor looked up and smiled. "Good morning, my dear. Come, sit with me. Daniel is on a work call and Grace went to town for some things I need." Maya sat beside her, aware that it was the first time they had been completely alone since her arrival. "Couldn't sleep?" asked Eleanor, observing her with those eyes that seemed to see too much. "I slept fine, thank you." "You lie very badly, you know." The old woman laughed softly. "You have dark circles that could hold secrets. Does my grandson snore?" "Because his grandfather snored like a lion and I almost went crazy the first years of our marriage." Maya couldn't help a small smile. "No, he doesn't snore, it's just adjusting to a new place." "I understand. I didn't sleep well my first weeks in my husband's house either. I came from a little farmhouse where 5 siblings shared one room, and suddenly I had a room all to myself." The silence scared me. "You've had a lot of siblings?" "6. I was the second, the first to leave home to work in the city." Maya had read this in the documents Daniel had prepared for her, but hearing it directly from Eleanor was different. There was a truth in her voice that no file could capture. "What was it like?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Leaving everything you knew to come work here?" Eleanor took a sip of her tea before answering. Terrifying and liberating, and everything in between those two things. She paused. "I was 16 when I arrived in the city. My first employer was a horrible woman who made me work 18 hours and paid me in food. The second wasn't much better, but the third taught me to read." "You didn't know how to read?" "My dear, in my town girls didn't go to school. Girls learned to cook, to clean, to take care of siblings. Education was for boys." Eleanor smiled with a hint of bitterness. "But Mrs. Patterson, my third employer, was different. Every night after I finished my chores, she would sit with me in the kitchen and teach me my letters. It took me 2 years to learn to read a whole book." Maya felt a lump in her throat. She thought of her own mother, who had finished high school at 40, studying at night after working all day. "My mother didn't finish school young either," she said without thinking. "She had to work from age 12 to help her parents." Eleanor looked at her with renewed interest. "Is that so? Daniel never told me that. Actually, he's never told me much about your family." Maya tensed. She had made a mistake, had spoken about her real life instead of the fictional one. "It's just, my family and I don't have much of a relationship," she improvised. "We prefer not to talk about it." "I understand. Every family has its wounds." The silence that followed was strangely comfortable. Eleanor finished her tea and set the cup on the bench. "Do you know what I like most about you, Maya?" "What?" "That you don't pretend to be what you're not." Maya felt her heart stop. "What? What do you mean?" "I mean, I've met many women who tried to get close to my family for money. Women who smiled too much, who said what they thought I wanted to hear, who acted as if they'd never had a difficult day in their lives." Eleanor took her hand. "But you don't do that. You carry your struggles in the way you walk, in the way you look at things as if you're calculating their value. I recognize that look because I had it for years. Grandma, you don't have to explain anything. I just want you to know that whatever has happened in your life, you're part of this family now, and in this family, we protect each other." Maya couldn't respond. The tears she had held back for 3 days threatened to overflow. I'm going to get more tea," she murmured, standing up abruptly. "Can I bring you another cup?" "Of course, my dear, take your time." Maya walked toward the kitchen with quick steps, almost running. Once inside, she leaned against the counter and let the tears fall in silence. What was she doing? What kind of monster was she, deceiving this woman who treated her with more love than most of her own family had ever shown her? "Are you okay?" She turned, startled. Daniel was at the kitchen doorway, phone still in hand and a worried expression on his face. "I'm fine," she lied, wiping her cheeks. "Just allergies, pollen." He said nothing, but approached and offered her a cloth handkerchief he pulled from his pants pocket. "Thanks. What happened?" Maya hesitated. Part of her wanted to yell at him, blame him for putting her in this impossible situation. But another part, one that was growing with each passing day, understood that he was as trapped as she was. "Your grandmother told me about her youth, about how she learned to read." "Ah." Daniel leaned against the counter beside her. "It's one of her favorite stories. It's more than a story. It's her life. A real life, with real struggles. And here I am lying to her face." "Maya, no." She raised a hand to stop him. "Don't tell me it's necessary. Don't tell me it's for her own good. Because every time I hear her talk, every time she looks at me with that love I don't deserve, I feel like I'm breaking into pieces." Daniel was silent for a long moment. "Want to know a secret?" he said finally. "Me too." Maya looked at him, surprised. "Every time my grandmother hugs me, every time she tells me how proud she is of me, I think about all the lies I've told her. Not just these, but my whole life. The businesses that were going badly, and I told her were going well. The nights I spent alone and told her I was with friends. The moments I wanted to give up and told her everything was under control. Why do you lie to her so much? Because she's the only person in the world whose disappointment I couldn't bear." The air between them changed. They were no longer two strangers bound by an absurd contract. They were two people who shared something deeper, the weight of the lies we tell those we love most. "I have to take her the tea," Maya said quietly. "I'll help you." Together, they prepared a tray with tea, cookies, and some fruit. As they did, their hands brushed several times, and each touch left a trail of electricity that neither dared to name. When they went out to the garden, Eleanor watched them approach with a smile that suggested she saw much more than she let on. "Look at you two," she said, accepting her cup of tea. "Marriage suits you. You look more comfortable with each other." Maya exchanged a look with Daniel. He offered her a half smile, and she felt something loosen in her chest. "It's just a game," she reminded herself. "None of this is real." But as she sat beside Eleanor to hear more stories from her youth, with Daniel on the other side, and the storm wind swaying the roses, Maya began to wonder if the line between real and fake was as clear as she had believed. The call came at 3 in the morning on the 4th day. Maya woke to the sound of her phone vibrating insistently on the nightstand. In the darkness, it took her a few seconds to remember where she was. Not in her small apartment with the damp walls and the neighbor who snored on the other side, but in a dream mansion, pretending to be someone she wasn't. The name on the screen woke her with a jolt. County General Hospital. "Yes?" she answered with her heart in her throat. "Ms. Torres, I'm calling from the emergency department. Your mother, Rosa Torres, has just been admitted. We need you to come as soon as possible." The world stopped. What happened? Is she okay? What's wrong with her? She suffered a severe respiratory crisis. The doctors are stabilizing her now, but it's important for a family member to be present to authorize procedures. Maya was already out of bed, searching for her clothes in the darkness. "I'm on my way, 15 minutes. Tell her I'm on my way." She hung up and found Daniel standing by the divan, completely awake. "What happened?" "My mother. She's in the hospital. I have to go." There was no time for explanations or elaborate excuses. Maya dressed hurriedly with the nearest clothes she had, an old t-shirt and the jeans she had arrived in, and looked for her purse. "I'll take you," said Daniel. "No, you have to stay with your grandmother." "Maya." "No." She stopped at the door and looked at him. "This is my real life, you understand? The one that exists outside this charade. My mother is alone in a hospital and she needs me. I'm going to be with her, and you're going to stay here and continue with the plan. I'll make something up. Say I had to go out to buy something, whatever. But I'm not going to let my mother die because I'm busy pretending to be your wife." The harshness of her words surprised them both. Maya saw something cross Daniel's face, pain, guilt, but she had no time to analyze it. "At least let me get you a car," he said. "I don't need your charity." "It's not charity. It's common sense. It's 3 in the morning and there's no public transportation." Maya wanted to argue, but the image of her mother on a hospital gurney silenced any protest. Fine, but just the car. 10 minutes later, she was in the back seat of a black sedan, speeding across the city toward the hospital. The driver, a silent, middle-aged man, asked no questions when Maya gave him the address of a public hospital in one of the poorest neighborhoods of the city. County General Hospital was an old building with walls that had once been white and hallways that smelled of cheap disinfectant. Maya knew that smell all too well. She had spent entire weeks breathing it during her father's illness. She found her mother in the emergency room, connected to an oxygen mask and surrounded by beeping monitors. Rosa opened her eyes when Maya entered, and despite her evident weakness, she tried to smile. "Sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want to worry you." "Don't talk." Maya took her hand and sat beside her. "What happened?" "Couldn't breathe. Called the neighbor. She called the ambulance." "Did you take your medicine?" "Ran out 2 days ago." Maya closed her eyes. 2 days. She had been so focused on the charade at the mansion that she hadn't remembered to refill the prescription. The money was in the bank, all that money Daniel had transferred to her, and she hadn't thought of the most basic thing, buying her mother's medicine. "It's my fault," she murmured. "I should have." "No." Rosa squeezed her hand with surprising strength. "Not anyone's fault. Just Old body. The doctor came in shortly after. He was a young man with dark circles that spoke of too many night shifts and too few breaks. Are you the daughter? Yes. Your mother suffered pulmonary edema. We managed to stabilize her, but she needs to stay under observation for at least 48 hours, and after that... He paused. Miss, I'm going to be honest with you. Your mother's heart is failing. She needs constant medication and eventually might need surgical intervention. What kind of intervention? There are options. Some are covered by public insurance, others aren't. I'll leave you information to review calmly. When the doctor left, Maya sat staring at the brochures he had given her. Options. Surgeries. Costs with numbers that had too many zeros. Even with Daniel's money, some of those figures were astronomical. Maya. She looked up. Her mother was watching her with that gaze that seemed to see through all her defenses. Where were you? Rosa asked. When I called, your phone. You didn't answer. I was. Working. An extra shift. At 3. In the morning. Mom? Maya Maria, I've known you since you were a cell in my womb. I know when you're lying. Maya felt the tears she had held back for hours finally spill over. I did something, she confessed. Something I don't know if it's right or wrong. I did it for you to be able to pay for your treatment, but what did you do, my child? And there, in that emergency room that smelled of disinfectant and fear, Maya told her mother everything. The absurd proposal, the money, the marriage charade, the grandmother who treated her like a daughter. Rosa listened in silence, without interrupting, and when Maya finished, silence stretched between them like an abyss. Tell me I did wrong, Maya whispered. Tell me I'm a terrible person. Tell me something. Rosa sighed, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of her being. My child, won't if I could. I would have done the same. Anything to protect you. But you taught me that dignity can't be sold. And you didn't sell it. Rosa extended her hand to caress her daughter's cheek. You did a job. A strange job. Yes, but a job. To take care of me. It's a lie, Mom. I'm deceiving an old woman who treats me like I'm her family. And how do you treat her? Maya blinked. I listen to her. I talk to her. I care about what happens to her. Then you're not completely pretending. Part of what you do is real. Her mother's words hung in the air of the room, mixing with the constant beeping of the monitors. It was almost dawn when Maya left the hospital. The sky was beginning to lighten on the horizon, painting the city in shades of pink and gold. The black sedan was still waiting for her in the parking lot. The driver had stayed all night. Thank you, she told him as she got in. You can take me back. During the ride, Maya checked her phone. She had several messages from Daniel. How's your mother? Let me know if you need anything. I told my grandmother you had to leave early for an urgent matter. She didn't ask questions. Please, when you can, let me know if you're okay. Maya stared at those messages for a long moment. Then she wrote, My mother is stable. I'll be back in an hour. When she arrived at the mansion, she found Daniel waiting for her on the porch. The sun had fully risen, and birds were singing in the garden trees, oblivious to the drama unfolding in human lives. How is she? He asked. Stable. But she needs care that goes beyond what the money you gave me can cover. Maya, I'm not asking you for more money. She raised a hand. I'm just telling you the truth. My mother is sick. Very sick. And I'm here playing house with a millionaire while she's alone in a hospital. She doesn't have to be alone. Daniel stepped toward her. I can hire nurses, the best specialists. Why would you do that? Because... He seemed to search for the right words. Because I got you into this. Because you're here because of me. And because I care what happens to you. Maya looked at him, searching for the lie, the selfish angle, the trap. But she only found something she didn't expect. Sincerity. We have 3 more days, she said finally. 3 days, and this ends. I know. And when it ends, we go back to our lives. You to your company and me to cleaning houses. Is that what you want? The question caught her off guard. What did she want? She had spent so much time surviving that she had forgotten what it felt like to want something for herself. "What I want doesn't matter," she answered. "What matters is what's real." She walked away toward the house before he could respond, leaving the question suspended in the dawn air. That night, at dinner, no one mentioned her absence from the morning. Grace watched her with more suspicion than ever, but Eleanor seemed genuinely happy to have her back. And when the old woman took her hand during dessert and said, "I'm glad you're here, my dear," Maya felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. "It's fake," she reminded herself. "All of this is fake." But as Daniel watched her from across the table, with eyes that no longer seemed like a stranger's, Maya began to wonder if perhaps, just perhaps, what was fake could become something real. The storm that had threatened for days finally unleashed over the mansion on the night of the 5th day. The sky opened with a fury that made the window panes tremble, and lightning illuminated the gardens like flashes from a giant camera. Maya was in the library, a room full of books that probably no one had read in decades, when she heard the first thunder. She had come down looking for something to read, unable to sleep, and had lost herself among the dusty shelves until she found a worn copy of 100 Years of Solitude. "You can't sleep either," she turned. Daniel was at the door in a simple t-shirt and pajama pants that made him look surprisingly normal. "Your grandmother says that when there are strong storms, you have to stay awake to make sure the roof doesn't blow off," Maya replied. "She used to say that when we lived in the old house, which really could lose its roof, this mansion has withstood hurricanes." Even so, he came in and sat in the armchair across from her. The only light came from an antique lamp that cast dancing shadows on the walls. "How's your mother?" he asked. "Better. They discharged her this morning. The neighbor is taking care of her." "Why didn't you tell me? I could have." "Daniel," Maya closed the book on her lap. "You've already done enough. The money, the cars, everything. I don't need you to keep rescuing me. I'm not trying to rescue you. I'm trying to—" He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I don't know what I'm trying to do." The silence that followed was interrupted only by the patter of rain against the windows. "Tell me something about yourself," Maya said suddenly. "Something real. Something that isn't in those folders you gave me to memorize." Daniel seemed surprised by the request. "What do you want to know?" "Anything. Something you haven't told anyone." He looked at her for a long moment, as if evaluating whether he could trust her. "When I was 12, he began, my father abandoned us. From one day to the next, he left with his secretary and left my mother, my brother and me with nothing. My grandfather had already died and the company was in the red. Everyone said we were finished." Maya waited, sensing there was more. "My grandmother was the one who pulled us through. She sold her jewelry, mortgaged the old house, worked day and night to keep the business afloat. And never, not once, did she make us feel like we were a burden." Daniel paused. "That's why I can't disappoint her. That's why I invented the lie about the wife, because after everything she did for us, how could I tell her I had failed at the only thing that really mattered to her? Love? Family." He looked up at her. "My grandmother always says that business comes and goes, but family is what remains. And I became so obsessed with work that I forgot that part. It's not too late." "Isn't it? You're 38. Some people find love at 80. "And you?" he asked. "Have you ever found love?" Maya smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I was engaged once, 5 years ago. His name was Marcus, and he was a bus driver. We met on the 5 a.m. route. I was going to my first job of the day, and he was starting his shift." "What happened?" "My father happened." Maya took a deep breath. "He got sick and everything we had saved for the wedding went to treatments. Marcus held on for a year, but then he started saying we'd never have a normal life as long as I kept carrying my family. He gave me an ultimatum, him or them, and you chose your family." "I would always choose my family." She looked at him directly. "Does that make me an idiot?" "No." Daniel leaned forward. "It makes you someone with the right priorities." The storm roared outside, a thunder so loud it made the books on the shelves tremble. Maya hugged herself involuntarily. "I hated storms when I was a kid," she confessed. "My father used to tell me it was heaven playing the drums. My grandfather used to say it was the angels bowling. They looked at each other and for the first time laughed together. A real laugh, not the fake one they had practiced for dinners with Eleanor. "It's strange," said Maya when the laughter faded. "A week ago, you were a stranger who offered me money to lie, and now what? Now, I don't know. It's hard for me to see you as the villain of this story." "Maybe because there are no villains," he replied, "just desperate people making desperate decisions. Very philosophical for a millionaire businessman. I have my moments." The library clock struck 1 in the morning. Maya realized they had been talking for hours, lost in stories and confessions that neither of them had planned to share. "We should sleep," she said, though she didn't move. "We should," he agreed, though he didn't move either. "Tomorrow is the 6th day. We only have 2 left." "I know. And after that. Let's not think about that now." Daniel stood and, to Maya's surprise, extended his hand to her. "What are you doing?" "Helping you up. It's what a gentleman would do, isn't it?" "I didn't know gentlemen still existed. We're an endangered species, but we do what we can." Maya took his hand and he helped her to her feet. They ended up very close to each other, close enough for her to smell his cologne, something expensive, no doubt, mixed with something more basic, more human. "Maya." "No." She took a step back. "Whatever you were going to say, don't say it." "Why?" "Because this ends in 2 days. And I can't. I can't add more complications to something that's already a disaster." He nodded, though something in his eyes suggested that the unspoken words were still there, waiting for a moment that might never come. They climbed the stairs together to the room they shared, and that night, for the first time, Maya couldn't ignore Daniel's presence on the divan. She heard every one of his movements, every sigh, every moment when he too seemed unable to sleep. The storm was subsiding as the hours passed, until only the soft sound of rain hitting the windows remained. And sometime between darkness and dawn, Maya allowed herself to think about something she had sworn not to think about. What if I don't want this to end? It was a dangerous thought, a thought that could destroy everything she had built, all the defenses she had raised over years of struggle and sacrifice. But there it was, as real as the rain falling outside, as impossible to ignore as the beating of her own heart. 2 more days, she told herself. Just 2 more days, and everything goes back to normal. But even as she thought it, she knew that nothing would ever be normal again, because somewhere between the lies and the truths of that impossible week, something had changed. And changes, as Maya well knew, couldn't be undone just because they were inconvenient. The 6th day dawned with a radiant sun that seemed to mock the previous night's storm. The mansion gardens gleamed with water droplets hanging from every leaf and petal, transforming the landscape into an impressionist painting. Maya came down to breakfast with dark circles that no makeup could disguise. The night had been long, populated by thoughts that refused to be silenced, and the constant presence of Daniel on the other side of the room. Eleanor was already in the dining room, with Grace serving her a cup of tea with the precision of someone who has repeated the same ritual for 40 years. "Good morning, my dear," the old woman greeted her with her usual smile. "Did you sleep well?" "The storm kept me awake for a while," Maya replied, which was technically true. "Me too, but there's something comforting about storms, don't you think? They remind us there are forces greater than ourselves." Maya poured herself coffee and was about to sit down when the sound of a car came from the main entrance. Grace looked out the window and her expression hardened. "It's Mr. Kevin," she announced. The change in atmosphere was immediate. Eleanor set her cup on the saucer with a soft clink, and something that might have been worry crossed her face. "How strange. We weren't expecting Kevin until the weekend." Maya felt her stomach contract. The brother, the one who, according to Daniel, would do anything to destroy him. The one who investigated, suspected, waited for the perfect moment to attack. The dining room door opened and a man entered, who was clearly of the same blood as Daniel, but with a distorted version of his features. Where Daniel had defined angles, Kevin had softness. Where Daniel projected control, Kevin emanated something more slippery, harder to define. He was 35 but looked younger, with the appearance of someone who had never really worked a day in his life. "Grandma," he exclaimed with manufactured enthusiasm, approaching to kiss Eleanor's cheeks. "How wonderful to see you looking so well. The trip has done you wonders." "Kevin, dear, what a surprise." Eleanor's voice was warm but cautious. "We weren't expecting you. I know, but when I heard you'd arrived I couldn't resist the temptation to come say hello." His eyes settled on Maya with a gleam that made her feel like an insect under a microscope. "And I was also very eager to meet my new sister-in-law." He approached Maya and took her hand to kiss it. The gesture was formally correct, but there was something in the way his fingers lingered on hers that gave her a shiver. "Maya, right? I've heard so much about you." "I hope good things," she replied, maintaining her composure. "Oh, very good. Very, very good." He released her hand and dropped into a chair. "Though I must confess I was surprised not to be invited to the wedding. We're family, after all." "It was something intimate," said Maya, repeating the rehearsed story. "Just the two of us. How romantic and how convenient." "Kevin." Eleanor's voice now had an edge of warning. "Maya is part of this family now. Treat her with the respect she deserves." "Of course, Grandma. I didn't mean to offend." Kevin raised his hands in a gesture of innocence that fooled no one. "I'm just trying to get to know the woman who conquered my brother's heart better. It's natural to be curious, isn't it?" At that moment, Daniel appeared in the dining room doorway. Maya saw how his expression hardened when he saw his brother, how his shoulders tensed under his impeccable shirt. "Kevin. What an unexpected visit." "Brother." Kevin stood to embrace him, an embrace that Daniel returned with evident stiffness. "I had to come meet your wife. Family comes first, isn't that what Grandma always says?" The two brothers looked at each other for a moment that seemed charged with a lifetime of silent rivalry. Maya watched the exchange, feeling she was witnessing something much deeper than a simple family reunion. Breakfast continued with a tension you could cut with a knife. Kevin monopolized the conversation, telling anecdotes about his children, his wife, his perfect life in the suburbs. Every story seemed designed to highlight everything Daniel didn't have: a traditional family, stability, normalcy. "My wife is dying to meet you, Maya," Kevin said at some point. "We should organize a family dinner. With the kids, of course. Grandma will love seeing her great-grandchildren." "That would be lovely," Maya replied, though the idea made her nauseous. "Perfect. I'll organize it for this weekend." Kevin smiled, and for the first time Maya saw something predatory in that smile. "I'm sure it will be a revealing evening." After breakfast, Kevin asked to speak privately with his brother. Maya watched them walk away toward the study, feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Eleanor touched her arm gently. "Don't worry about Kevin," she said quietly. "His bark is worse than his bite." "Has he always been like this?" "Since he was a child. He's always wanted what Daniel has, always felt the world owes him something." The old woman sighed. "I love them both, but I'm not blind to their faults. Kevin has a small heart, full of envy. Daniel has a big heart, but he's locked it behind so many walls that sometimes even he can't find it." "Why are you telling me this?" Eleanor looked at her with those eyes that saw too much. "Because I think you can help him tear down those walls," she paused, "and because I want you to be prepared for what's coming. Kevin didn't come here just to say hello. He came looking for something, and when he finds it, he won't hesitate to use it." Maya felt the ground opening beneath her feet. "Grandma, Shh." Eleanor squeezed her hand. "Whatever is happening, I trust you, and I trust my grandson. The rest will work itself out." She walked away, leaning on her cane, leaving Maya alone with her fears and the certainty that the house of cards they had built was about to collapse. Daniel's study was a sanctuary of dark wood and antique books that smelled of leather and secrets. Kevin was standing by the window, looking out at the gardens with an expression that pretended to be casual, but fooled no one. "Nice house," he said without turning. "Grandma always had good taste." "Say what you have to say, Kevin. I don't have time for games." Kevin turned with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Always so direct, so efficient, the perfect heir." He crossed his arms. "You know, I spent my whole childhood hearing how wonderful you were. Daniel this, Daniel that. The favorite grandson, the one who would save the family business, the one who would make Grandma proud. I didn't come here to listen to your resentments. No, of course not. You never have time for emotions, do you? Everything is work, responsibility, duty. Kevin approached the desk and dropped a folder on the mahogany surface. Except when it comes to lying. Daniel felt his heart stop, but his expression remained impassive. What are you talking about? I'm talking about this. Kevin opened the folder. Inside were photographs, many photographs. Maya in a cleaning uniform entering luxury buildings, Maya getting off a bus in a poor neighborhood, Maya at the door of a public hospital. Your wife has a very interesting life for an interior designer, Kevin said in a silky voice. Seems like she spends a lot of time cleaning other people's houses for someone of her position. Are you spying on me? I'm protecting you, brother. Protecting the family from what's clearly a con artist, trying to get her hands on our grandmother's fortune. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Kevin pulled out more documents. Maya Maria Torres, 32 years old, no college degree, works for 3 different cleaning agencies, lives in a rental apartment in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city with her sick mother. He looked up triumphantly. She's not an interior designer. She's not your wife. She's a fraud you hired to deceive our grandmother. The silence that followed was absolute. Daniel felt all the lies of the past 2 years crowding in his throat, choking him. Kevin, what? Are you going to deny it? I have proof, Daniel. Proof that any decent private investigator can get in a week. He closed the folder with a sharp snap. The question is, what am I going to do with this information? What do you want? The question came out before Daniel could stop it, and he saw how his brother's face lit up with satisfaction. I want what I should have always had, control of the company, Grandma's trust, the recognition you've stolen from me my whole life. I haven't stolen anything from you. You've stolen everything from me. For the first time, Kevin's facade cracked, revealing the rage boiling underneath. Every opportunity, every word of encouragement, every look of pride, it was all for you. And I was left with the scraps, with the we love you too, Kevin, with the perpetual second place. That's not my fault. No, it's the fault of a system that favored you from the moment you were born. But now I have the chance to balance the scales. Kevin moved closer until he was face to face with his brother. You're going to resign from the company presidency. You're going to recommend me as your successor. And you're going to disappear from Grandma's life so I can be for once the grandson she deserves. And if I don't accept, then I show everything to Grandma. The photos, the documents, the proof that you've been lying to her for 2 years. Kevin smiled. Imagine her disappointment. Imagine her broken heart. Imagine what that would do to an 83-year-old woman with heart problems. The threat hung in the air like a knife over their heads. Daniel closed his eyes, feeling the weight of all his decisions falling on him at once. Give me time to think about it. You have until tomorrow night. The family dinner I mentioned will be the perfect time to make the announcement. Kevin picked up the folder and walked toward the door. And Daniel, don't try anything stupid. If anything happens to me, all this information automatically goes to Grandma, the press, and the company's board of directors. He left, leaving Daniel alone with the echo of his footsteps and the bitter taste of defeat. Maya found Daniel in the garden, sitting on the same bench where Eleanor had told her story days before. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn, and the air smelled of wet earth after the storm. What happened? She asked, sitting beside him. Daniel didn't answer immediately. His gaze was lost on some point on the horizon, and for the first time since she'd known him, Maya saw in him a completely defeated man. Kevin knows everything. The words fell like stones in a pond, creating waves of panic that spread through Maya's entire body. How? He hired a private investigator. He has photos, documents, everything. Daniel finally looked at her. He wants me to resign from the company in exchange for his silence. If I don't, he tells Grandma everything tomorrow at dinner. Maya felt the world spinning too fast. Daniel, I'm sorry, this is my fault. If I had been more careful, if I had... No. He took her hand. "This is my fault. I got you into this. I built this lie, and now I don't know how to get out of it without destroying everything." They sat in silence, hands intertwined, as the sun continued its descent toward the horizon. Maya thought about her mother, about the money she had already used to pay off debts, about the life she had begun to rebuild thanks to this charade. It was all about to crumble. "There's another option," she said finally. "What?" "The truth." Daniel looked at her, as if she had lost her mind. "What?" "We can tell your grandmother the truth. Before Kevin does. Before dinner." Maya took a deep breath. "We explain everything. Why you did it. How it started. What's happened this week. And we let her decide what to do with that information. Maya, that could kill her. Her heart. Her heart is stronger than you think, and her mind is sharper than anyone gives her credit for." Maya squeezed his hand. "Daniel, your grandmother was poor. She worked as a housekeeper. She built everything she has from scratch. Do you really think a woman like that can't handle the truth? It's not the same. No, it's not. But it's better than letting Kevin control the narrative. If he tells her first, he can twist everything, make you look like the villain. But if we tell her, if we show her we're sorry, that we understand what we did wrong, she might forgive us, or she might hate us forever." Maya wasn't going to lie to him about the risks. But at least it would be our truth, told by us, in our words. Daniel stared at her for a long moment. Maya watched emotions cross his face. Fear, doubt, hope, determination. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "You could just leave. You have the money. Your mother is better. You have no obligation to stay and face this disaster with me." "Because," Maya searched for the right words, "because your grandmother deserves the truth. And because even though this started as a charade, it doesn't feel like that anymore. I don't know what I feel for you, Daniel. Everything has been so fast, so confusing. But I know I can't leave this mess behind. I wouldn't be able to live with myself." He raised his hand, and with a tenderness that surprised her, brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You're the bravest person I've ever met." "I'm not brave. I'm terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing the right thing despite it." They looked into each other's eyes, and something changed definitively between them. They were no longer two strangers bound by a contract. They were two people who had gone through something extraordinary together and were now facing the consequences together. "Let's go talk to your grandmother," said Maya. "Now?" "Now, before I lose my nerve." They got up from the bench and walked toward the mansion, hands still intertwined. The sun was setting behind them, painting the sky in oranges and reds, as if the universe itself were holding its breath for what was about to come. They found Eleanor in the library, reading with the help of glasses that made her look smaller and more fragile. Grace was beside her, knitting in silence. "Grandma," said Daniel with a voice that barely trembled, "we need to talk to you." Eleanor looked up from her book and observed them for a moment. Then, with an almost imperceptible gesture, she indicated to Grace to leave them alone. "Sit down," she said, pointing to the sofa across from her. "I've been waiting for this conversation for days." Maya and Daniel exchanged a look of surprise, but obeyed. They sat side by side, still holding hands. "Waiting?" asked Daniel. "My boy, I'm 83 years old, and I've seen more lies in my life than I can count." Eleanor closed the book and removed her glasses. "Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out?" The silence that followed was deafening. "How long have you known?" Maya whispered. "Since the first day, since the moment I saw how you looked at each other." Eleanor smiled slightly. Newlyweds don't look at each other with that mixture of terror and distrust. They look at each other with familiarity, with that comfort that only comes from shared time. You looked at each other like two strangers forced to share a space. "Grandma, Daniel couldn't continue. The words caught in his throat. "Let me finish." Eleanor raised a hand. "I knew something was wrong, but I decided to wait. I wanted to see what you would do. If you would keep lying until the end, or if you would find the courage to tell me the truth. And if we hadn't come to tell you," asked Maya, "then I would have known my grandson wasn't the man I thought he was." Eleanor's eyes glistened with contained tears. But you came, and that means more than you can imagine. Daniel released Maya's hand and knelt before his grandmother. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted you to be happy. I wanted you to believe I was happy. My foolish boy. Eleanor caressed his face with trembling hands. My happiness never depended on you having a wife. It depended on you being honest, having integrity, being the man I know you can be. I failed at all of that. No, you made a mistake. A big mistake, yes. But a mistake doesn't define a life. Eleanor looked at Maya. Come here, child. Maya approached, feeling her knees weak. She knelt beside Daniel, and Eleanor took both their hands. Now I want you to tell me everything, from the beginning, without omissions, without embellishment, the complete truth. And that's what they did. For the next hour, Daniel and Maya told her everything. The lie that had started as protection, the invented letters, the unexpected arrival, the desperate proposal, the eviction notice, the sick mother, the 7 days that had changed everything. Eleanor listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, letting a tear fall when the story warranted it. When they finished, the sun had set completely, and the library was lit only by the soft glow of the lamps. Kevin is coming tomorrow, said Daniel. He has all the information and plans to use it to destroy me. Kevin. Eleanor pronounced her other grandson's name with a mixture of sadness and resignation. I always knew envy was consuming him, but I hoped he would mature, that he would find his own path without needing to destroy his brothers. What do we do? Asked Maya. Eleanor was silent for a long moment, looking toward the dark window. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm. Tomorrow, at dinner, we're going to give Kevin exactly what he expects to find. What do you mean? I mean, we're going to let him make his big revelation. Let him show his photos and documents. Let him believe he's won. A smile appeared on the old woman's lips. And then, I'm going to tell my own story. The main dining room table of the mansion was set for battle. Silver candelabras, fine crystal, immaculate linen napkins, the entire arsenal of elegance deployed as armor against what was to come. Kevin arrived early, accompanied by his wife, Patricia, a blonde woman with an expression of perpetual boredom, and their 2 small children who ran around the house without anyone setting limits. The atmosphere was one of false cordiality, like a chess game where both players know the checkmate that's coming. Maya had dressed in the only formal dress she had brought, a simple black one that Daniel had bought for her on the 2nd day of the charade. But now, as she looked at herself in the bathroom mirror before going down, she didn't feel like she was wearing a costume. She felt like she was preparing for something important, something that would define who she really was. Ready? Asked Daniel from the doorway. No, but that's never stopped me from doing what I have to do. He approached and gently adjusted the necklace, alone from Eleanor, that she wore around her neck. Whatever happens tonight, thank you. Don't thank me yet. It could still all go wrong. It could, but at least we'll face the bad outcome together. They went down to the dining room hand in hand, and Maya noticed how Kevin's eyes followed their every movement. The younger brother radiated barely contained satisfaction, the excitement of a hunter who knows his prey is cornered. Dinner began with trivial conversations, the weather, the children's school, business. Eleanor presided over the table with the grace of a queen, giving nothing away of what she knew. Grace served the dishes with her usual efficiency, but Maya detected something different in her gaze, something that might have been complicity. It was between the main course and dessert that Kevin decided to attack. "Grandma," he said, wiping his lips with his napkin, "there's something I think you should know, something about my brother and his wife." "Kevin, this isn't the time," Patricia interjected, but her husband ignored her. "No, dear, it's exactly the time." He pulled out the folder he had hidden under his chair. "You see, Grandma, I've been doing some investigating. You know how I am, always looking out for the family." "Investigating?" Eleanor arched an eyebrow. "How interesting." "Yes, and I discovered something disturbing." He opened the folder and began spreading photographs across the table. "This woman my brother introduced to you as his wife isn't an interior designer. She's a simple housekeeper, a woman who cleans houses for a living. The silence that followed was absolute. Kevin's children stopped playing with their food, perhaps sensing the tension in the air. Look, Grandma, here she is entering a building in a cleaning uniform. Here she is waiting for a bus in a poor neighborhood. And here. Kevin pointed to a photo with a triumphant finger. Here's the apartment where she really lives. A miserable place, nothing like the lifestyle my brother's wife should have. Kevin. Daniel began to speak, but his grandmother raised a hand. Let him finish. Kevin smiled, interpreting the gesture as permission to continue. This is all a charade, Grandma. Daniel hired this woman to make you believe he was married. He's been lying to you for years. The letters, the photos, everything was invented. He leaned back in his chair with satisfaction. I think this proves my brother isn't worthy of the trust you've placed in him, or the company, or anything. Patricia was looking at her husband with a mixture of horror and shame. The children had gone completely silent. Grace remained motionless by the door like a statue. Eleanor took her time responding. She examined the photographs one by one, with the calm of someone reviewing the morning mail. They're good photos, she said finally. Your investigator has a good eye. So you admit that? I admit that everything you say is true. Eleanor set the photos on the table and looked at Maya. This woman isn't a designer. She's a domestic worker, and she's not married to my grandson. Kevin's expression was one of pure ecstasy. I knew it from the beginning. What you didn't know, Eleanor continued, and her voice changed, acquiring an edge of steel, is that I know too since the first day. Kevin's smile froze. What? They told me yesterday. Daniel and Maya came to me and confessed the whole truth. Eleanor slowly stood, leaning on the table. They told me how the lie started, why they kept it going, what led them to this point, and I listened. But then you should be furious. You should disinherit them, throw them out of the family. Why? Eleanor walked around the table until she stood before Kevin. Because my grandson made a mistake trying to protect me? Because this woman accepted a desperate job to save her sick mother? They lied to you. Yes, they lied to me. And then when they could have kept lying, they chose to tell me the truth. Eleanor looked at her younger grandson with infinite sadness. Can you say the same, Kevin? Can you look me in the eye and tell me that everything you've done in your life has been honest? The color had drained from Kevin's face. Grandma, because I know some things too. I know about the company funds you've diverted. I know about the contracts you've signed without authorization. I know about the overseas account where you keep the money you steal from your own family. That's a lie. Grace, Eleanor didn't take her eyes off Kevin. Bring the documents. Grace disappeared and returned moments later with a folder considerably thicker than Kevin's. She set it on the table and withdrew in silence. Did you think you were the only one capable of hiring investigators? Eleanor opened the folder. I've been following your movements for 2 years, Kevin, hoping you would change, that you would mature, that you would become the man I know you could be. But instead, you came here tonight to try to destroy your brother, using the truth as a weapon. Kevin stood abruptly. You can't do this. I'm your grandson. You are my grandson, and I love you. But love doesn't mean blindness. Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment. You're going to return every penny you've stolen. You're going to resign from your position in the company, and you're going to seek professional help to deal with the envy that's consuming you. If you do all that, you'll remain part of this family. And if I don't, then you'll have to live with the consequences. This evidence will go to the company lawyers, and to the police if necessary. Patricia had stood up and was gathering her children, moving them away from the scene. Kevin looked at her, seeking support, but his wife wouldn't meet his gaze. This isn't over, Kevin said in a trembling voice. Yes, my boy, it is over. Eleanor returned to her seat, suddenly exhausted. You can go now. You have a lot to think about. Kevin stormed out of the dining room, followed by his family. Seconds later, the sound of a car starting and driving away broke the silence. Eleanor sighed deeply. Grandma, Daniel began, I'm not finished with you two yet. The old woman looked at them sternly. What you did was wrong, very wrong. You lied to me for 2 years, Daniel. 2 years of invented letters, fake photos, a life that didn't exist. I know, and there's no way to express how sorry I am. I don't want apologies. I want to understand. Eleanor looked at Maya. Tell me about your mother. Maya blinked, surprised by the question. Her name is Rosa. She's 60 and has heart problems. She's worked her whole life to take care of me, and now it was my turn to take care of her. And the money Daniel gave you. I paid off debts, bought her medicine, fixed some things in the apartment. Maya lowered her gaze. I also saved some for future emergencies. I haven't spent anything unnecessary, if that's what you're asking. That's not what I'm asking. Eleanor leaned forward. What I want to know is if, when you look at my grandson now, you see the man who hired you to lie, or you see something more. The question floated in the air. Maya looked at Daniel, who was watching her with a vulnerability she had never seen in him. I see a man who made a terrible mistake for the right reasons, she said finally. And I see someone who has changed during this week, who has shown me parts of himself that he probably doesn't show anyone. And you, Daniel, what do you see when you look at her? Daniel didn't take his eyes off Maya. I see the bravest, most honest, most extraordinary woman I've ever met in my life. And I see someone who makes me want to be better than I am. Eleanor nodded slowly. Good. She stood. Then I think there's hope for you two. She walked toward the door but stopped before leaving. The 7 days end tomorrow. After that, what you do with your lives is your decision. But I'll tell you something I learned many years ago when I was a maid in love with a merchant who seemed unreachable. What? Asked Maya. That true love doesn't understand social classes, past mistakes, or imperfect beginnings. It only understands two people who choose to be together day after day despite everything. She left the dining room, leaving them alone with the echo of her words and the weight of everything that had happened. Maya and Daniel looked at each other across the table full of half-finished plates and scattered photographs. What now? She asked. Now, he replied, we start over, if you want to. It was a question and an offer at the same time. Maya considered it for a long moment, weighing everything she had lived, everything she had felt, everything she still didn't understand. Yes, she said finally, I want to. And in that moment, something that had begun as a lie started to transform into something completely different. The 7th and final day of the charade dawned with a clarity that seemed symbolic. Maya woke before Daniel and stayed watching the sunrise from the bedroom balcony, thinking about everything that had changed in 1 week. 7 days. Just 7 days had been enough to turn her world upside down. She had arrived at this mansion as an imposter, a desperate woman willing to sell her dignity for money, and she was leaving. As what? She wasn't sure. She was no longer the housekeeper from the 42nd floor, but she wasn't a millionaire's wife either. She was something in between, something without a name. Good morning. She turned. Daniel was at the balcony door, disheveled with pillow marks on his face. Far from the impeccable businessman, he looked simply like a man. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Not much. I had too much to think about. He nodded and joined her on the balcony. They stood side by side, looking at the garden beginning to wake with birdsong. What's going to happen now? Asked Maya. I don't know, I suppose. I suppose you go back to your life and I go back to mine. Is that what you want? Daniel looked at her. No, but I don't know if I have the right to ask you for more. I got you into this mess, Maya. I used your desperation for my own purposes. No matter how it ended, that wasn't right. No, it wasn't. Maya took a deep breath. But I also made decisions. I accepted the money. I stayed when I could have left. I felt things that weren't in the contract. What things? I don't know yet. She turned to look at him directly. Daniel, all of this has been so fast, so intense. I don't know if what I feel is real or if it's just the result of an extreme situation. I need time to understand it. I understand. Do you? Yes. He took her hands. And I'm willing to wait, as long as you need, because for the first time in my life I think I found something worth waiting for. Maya felt tears accumulating in her eyes, but she held them back. I have to go back to my mother. Make sure she's okay, that the payments are in order, that our life keeps functioning. I know. And I need to think. Alone. Away from this mansion and everything it represents. I know. But that doesn't mean it's the end. She squeezed his hands. It just means I need to find myself before I can find an us. Daniel nodded, and Maya saw in his eyes something she never would have expected from the arrogant man she met a week ago: respect. The rest of the day was a whirlwind of goodbyes and promises. Eleanor hugged her for long minutes, whispering in her ear that she would always have a place in her family. Grace, to Maya's surprise, gave her a small charm that had belonged to her own mother. "For good luck," said the assistant with a smile that softened her normally severe features. "You're going to need it." The car that would take her back to her life arrived at 4 in the afternoon. Maya put her few belongings in the trunk. She had insisted on not taking the new clothes, though Eleanor protested, and stopped beside the vehicle door. Daniel stood before her, hands in his pockets, and an expression that tried to be neutral but fooled no one. "Take care of yourself," he said. "You too. Can I call you? Give me 2 weeks. After that, we'll see." He nodded. Maya got in the car, and as they drove away down the cypress-lined path, she looked back. Daniel was still standing in front of the mansion, a figure growing smaller against the backdrop of the house that had been her temporary prison and her liberation. The journey back was strangely silent. The driver asked no questions, and Maya didn't feel like talking. She looked out the window at the changing landscape, from the manicured gardens to the suburbs, from the suburbs to the working-class neighborhoods, until she finally recognized the streets of her neighborhood. The car stopped in front of her building, and Maya got out with her small suitcase. The contrast was brutal, from a mansion with gardens and fountains to an apartment block with peeling paint and garbage piling up on the corners. But when she climbed the creaking stairs and opened the door to her apartment, she found something no mansion could offer: her mother, sitting on the couch with better color in her cheeks and a smile that lit up the whole room. "My child, you're back." Maya dropped the suitcase and ran to embrace her. "I'm back, Mom, I'm back." And in that moment, surrounded by the familiar smell of her humble home, Maya knew she had made the right decision. She needed this. Reality, normalcy, the anchor of her previous life. Only from here could she decide if she wanted to build something new. A month after her return, Maya's life had found a new rhythm. She still worked as a housekeeper. She had insisted on keeping some of her clients, though Daniel's money allowed her to turn down the most exhausting ones. But now she had time for other things. To take care of her mother, whose treatment was working better than expected. To read the book she had always wanted to read. To think. And she thought a lot. About Daniel. About the 7 days they had shared. About the nighttime conversations during the storm. About the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't noticing. The 2 weeks she had asked for had turned into 3, then 4. Daniel didn't call. He didn't pressure her. He only sent her one brief message after the 2nd week. "I'm here when you're ready." It was her mother who finally broke the silence. "Are you going to keep avoiding him forever?" she asked one afternoon while Maya was making her tea. "I'm not avoiding him. Maya Maria, I've known you since you were a cell. I know when you're lying." Maya sighed and sat beside her mother. "I don't know what to do, Mom. Everything was so fast, so intense. How can I know if what I felt was real? And how will you know if you don't try? What if I'm wrong? What if it turns out I only liked the fantasy, not the real man?" Rosa took her daughter's hands. "My child, life doesn't come with guarantees. Your father and I got married after knowing each other only 3 months. Everyone said we were crazy, that we wouldn't last. And look, we lasted 32 years until death separated us. But he was different. He was from our world." "And what is our world?" "Poverty, constant struggle." Rosa shook her head. "The world has no borders, Maya, only the ones we build ourselves." Maya thought about those words for days afterward, and slowly the answer began to take shape in her mind. A month and a half after her departure, she made a decision. She didn't call Daniel. She didn't send him a message. She simply put on her best clothes, her own, not the ones he had bought her, and took the bus to downtown. The Ashford Textile Corporation building was a skyscraper of glass and steel that reflected the winter clouds. Maya entered through the main door, feeling the security guard's eyes on her. "I'm here to see Daniel Ashford," she told the receptionist. "Do you have an appointment?" "No. Then I'm afraid it's not possible. Mr. Ashford has a very busy schedule and—" "Tell him Maya Torres is here. He'll know who I am." The receptionist looked at her skeptically but picked up the phone. She spoke quietly for a few seconds, and her expression gradually changed from disdain to surprise. "Mr. Ashford will be right down," she said, in a completely different tone. "Can I offer you something while you wait? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thank you." Maya waited in the lobby, watching the coming and going of executives in expensive suits and leather briefcases. She felt out of place, like a fish out of water. But she no longer cared. She was no longer trying to fit into a world that wasn't hers. The elevator opened and Daniel came out almost running. He stopped a few meters from her as if afraid to get too close. "Maya." "Hi. I wasn't expecting. I was expecting, but I didn't know when. Can we talk somewhere private?" He nodded and led her to a small meeting room on the ground floor. He closed the door behind them, and they stood face to face, with all the weight of weeks of silence between them. "I'm sorry I didn't call sooner," said Maya. "I needed time." "I know, I understand. And I've been thinking a lot, about us, about what happened, about what could happen. And," Maya took a deep breath, "and I've decided I don't want a relationship based on money or gratitude, or the inertia of an extreme situation." She saw Daniel's shoulders tense, preparing for rejection. "But I've also decided I'd like to get to know you for real, without charades, without contracts, without masks." "What does that mean?" "It means I'd like you to ask me to dinner, like two normal people who just met. No mansions, no grandmothers, no vengeful brothers. Just you and me discovering if there's something real beneath everything we lived through." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. And then, for the first time since she had entered the building, he smiled. "Would you like to have dinner with me tonight, Maya Torres?" "I thought you'd never ask." 3 months later, at a neighborhood block party in Maya's community, the sound of drums filled the air, and colored lights transformed the humble streets into a magical stage. Daniel stood beside Maya, with a beer in his hand and a Hawaiian shirt that his girlfriend had forced him to wear. He looked completely out of place among the dancing neighbors, the running children, and the grandmothers selling empanadas on the corners. And he had never been happier. The last 3 months had been a journey of discovery, dinners at small restaurants Daniel never would have found on his own, afternoons at Maya's apartment, helping Rosa with her physical therapy exercises, weekends at the mansion, where Eleanor received them with open arms and Grace prepared their favorite dishes. It hadn't been easy. Their worlds remained different, and those differences created constant friction. Maya felt uncomfortable at the corporate events where Daniel had to appear. He felt watched and judged when they walked through her neighborhood. Maya's childhood friends accused her of having sold out. Daniel's business partners murmured about his new eccentricity. But every obstacle they overcame made them stronger. Every misunderstanding they resolved brought them closer. "Maya," a neighbor approached dancing. "Your millionaire boyfriend needs to learn how to dance salsa. It's embarrassing." "I'm not very good at dancing," Daniel admitted. "Nobody's born knowing. Come on, shall teach you." Before he could protest, Daniel was dragged onto the improvised dance floor in the middle of the street. Maya watched him trying to follow the rhythm, tripping over his own feet, laughing at himself. The perfect businessman turned into a clumsy salsa student. "He's a good man," Maya turned. Her mother was beside her, sitting in a chair someone had brought outside, with a blanket over her legs despite the heat. "Yes, he is." "Do you love him?" The question floated in the air, perfumed with fireworks and street food. "Yes, Mom. I love him." Rosa nodded, satisfied. "Then I have nothing left to worry about." Later, when the party was starting to wind down and the stars shone above the zinc rooftops of the neighborhood, Daniel and Maya walked to a small park she had known since childhood. They sat on a rusty bench, with the distant sound of music and laughter as their soundtrack. "I have something for you," said Daniel, pulling a small box from his pocket. Maya felt her heart race. Daniel, if that's what I think it is, it's not what you think. He smiled. Not yet. When I propose, it will be in a way you'll never forget. He opened the box. Inside was an antique bronze key hanging from a silver chain. What is this? It's the key to the house where my grandmother was born. The little farmhouse she always talks about. It's been abandoned for years, but she never wanted to sell it. Daniel took the key and placed it in her hand. A few days ago, she told me she wanted to give it to you. She says a woman who understands the value of hard work will know how to put it to good use. Maya looked at the key, speechless. We can restore it, Daniel continued. Turn it into something useful. A community center, a school, a shelter, whatever you want. She trusts your judgment. It's too much. It's exactly right. Daniel cupped her face in his hands. Maya, these 3 months you've taught me more about life than I learned in 38 years. You've shown me there's more to the world than board meetings and financial statements. You've made me want to be better, not to impress anyone, but because you deserve someone better. Daniel, let me finish. He took a deep breath. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if we'll always agree, if we'll manage to balance our worlds, if the difficulties we face will be greater than the ones we've already overcome. But I know one thing for certain. I want to find out with you. Day by day, step by step, for the rest of my life. Maya felt tears rolling down her cheeks, but this time she didn't hold them back. When I came to your apartment that day, I just wanted to finish cleaning and go home. I had no idea my life was about to change forever. Do you regret it? Not for a second. They kissed under the stars, in a rusty park in a poor neighborhood, with the noise of the party in the background and the weight of an antique key between them. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were no castles or princes or magical transformations. There were two imperfect people who had found something perfect in their imperfection. When they separated, Daniel wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumbs. What are you going to do with my grandmother's house? Maya looked up at the stars, thinking of all the women like her who cleaned other people's floors while dreaming of something more. Of all the mothers like hers who sacrificed everything for their children, of all the families that struggled every day to survive with dignity. I think I know exactly what to do, she said. And as they walked back toward the party, toward her mother, toward the life they were building together, Maya knew that the story that had begun as a desperate charade had become something much bigger. It wasn't just a love story between a housekeeper and a millionaire. It was a story about the truth that sets us free, about the second chances that transform us, about the courage to choose our own path, no matter what the world says, and about how sometimes the best beginnings are born from the most unexpected endings. A year later, Eleanor Ashford's old farmhouse had been transformed into the Working Hands Community Center, a space where low-income women could learn trades, finish their education, and find support for their families. Maya ran it with the same dedication she had once used to clean other people's houses, and Daniel had reorganized his priorities to be present at every opening, every graduation, every small triumph. Eleanor, at 84, visited the center every week to tell stories to the children and share her wisdom with the young women. She said seeing her old house full of life was the best gift she could receive. Kevin, after months of therapy and community service as part of his agreement with the family, had begun to rebuild his relationship with his brother. It wasn't easy, and probably never would be entirely, but there were good days. Days when it seemed that maybe, after all, blood was thicker than envy. Rosa Torres, with her treatment stabilized and her health improving, had become the honorary grandmother of all the children at the center. Her laughter filled the hallways every afternoon, and no one who saw her now could imagine the nights of anguish she had spent coughing on an old sofa. And Maya and Daniel. They simply lived, day by day, step by step, building something that had no name but felt more real than any contract ever signed. Because in the end, what had started as 7 days of lies had transformed into an entire lifetime of truths. And that was the only story that mattered.